Morena, Mamai Harimai, welcome. Ordinary meeting of council this morning. Don't believe we have any apologies this morning. We're all here. Any declarations of interest? I haven't been made aware of any. 4 is public forums, petitions, and delegations. I'm not aware of any this morning. So we move to 5, which is the confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council from the 1st of February. We'd like to move and second, and then we'll see if there's any. Moved by Lyndall, seconded by Alistair. It's open for discussion. Any corrections, alterations? I'm not seeing any. On the basis, I will put the motion. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Against, no, carried. We'll move to item 6, which is the adoption of the committee resolutions. First up is strategy and policy committee meeting of the 15th of February. Linda, would you like to comment on the meeting?
Oh, yes, thanks, Chairman. Just wanted to highlight the extensive workload that has been or is being worked on. We covered off a submission to the local government reform, spatial planning bill, the National Built Environment Bill, and those the latter two were joint submissions. So really nice to highlight the fact that we're working with TAs in that space. And we also submitted on the water services legislation bill. So that alone, on top of all the other things that are going on, and thanks to staff for all that tremendous work, because it's not no small thing, some of that. And also to highlight item 5, which was the analysis of New Zealand Council's responses to climate change, really comprehensive and informative state of the nation as far as what councils across the water are doing in that space. And I look forward to strategy and policy being able to assist the climate change subcommittee and find some direction and some not reinventing the wheel in some of that space. So really pleased with that work and happy to move that recommendation. Thank you.
Resolution's been moved by Lyndall, seconded by Morris. Any discussions or questions? Robert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could I ask a question about the cross council position on climate change? I wonder if you've got a feeling that you got one of the traps that we're falling into now in the face of cyclones is that we're moving, seemingly, government seems to be moving from talk and planning for mitigating, for stopping the extent of climate change to reacting to it and shoring up our resources. Do you see that happening there as well?
Well, we haven't really covered that conversation off yet, actually, Councillor, and Councillor Morrison might be better placed for, as far as the regional climate change conversation. So, you.
Yeah, thank you to Mr. Chair. We had a very successful initial meeting of the governance level for all the TAs and the regional council very recently. It was a very positive first meeting, set a strong foundation for the work to follow, and clearly within that work there was 2 distinct areas of focus. One was on mitigation of emissions and one was on adaptation, which is considered a very local issue to respond to. Again, the degree to which we give emphasis or priority to either one of those 2 broad work areas is yet to be determined at a cross TA level as we work through a strategic plan over the next 12 to 15 months.
Okay, thank you. My suggestion would be that we have to be very careful that we don't go to the latter rather than the former, which seems to be a natural process in the face of trauma. Thank you.
Resolution's been moved and seconded. I will put the resolution. All in favour will say aye. Aye. Against, no, carried. Right, we'll move to the regulatory committee meeting of the 15th. Neville, would you like to comment on your meetings?
Thank you, Chairman. Report for compliance with an additional matter which was raised with the we're in an integrated catchment management plan. And based around water quality, and you see all of the things that the various committees are doing actually in the moment. If you want to know more about that, I'm sure Paul Holes will be able to explain it in more detail. I'll move the recommendation anyway.
Moved by Neville, seconded for that, Jeremy. Any questions or discussion?
Just in relation to the resolution regarding the call-out facility, and it was recommended that a report be made available to the next meeting. I know that's not coming out for a while yet, but has any progress been made on that and on time to get that report? I know it's important.
I have to manage Manager Holes to get on to it because I haven't got any update.
Through the chair, yeah, Councillor Rodway, and so the questions around the Bluff Hollow and the update to council, so that's planned. We have a site visit in about 3 or 4 weeks' time where we're just exploring current stock take of where the different potential organisations are. So that will help to write that update for council. And I'm acutely aware of how keen council is to get that update, so that will come. I've not had a conversation whether it's best to go to the regulatory committee or regional services, or for that matter, workshop that council. I just need to work through that. But the second we've got it, I'll be updating council.
Thank you.
Chairman, there's actually about 4 parties involved in that project. It's not just up to us. We have to negotiate and make agreement with the other groups that are involved.
We've got to be the main thrust though, don't we?
Well,
It's our
I
environment.
would hope that we're driving the project, but it's not up to us to make it happen without the other parties, councils that are involved in landowners.
It's good to hear that the investigation is underway, and no doubt, I'm not sure which committee it'll come back to, but we can take it from there. And as Neville said, there are multi-parties that potentially could be involved in that, but having a haul-out facility, if we want to have our clean hole program to be successful, is pretty important going forward. Robert, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. It's slightly peripheral, but with regard to haul out and the challenges around getting that become a reality and climate change, some of the forums I belong to are west coast of the South Island gardening forums, and they're reporting that they are unable to find any kelp for their gardens this year, which might seem trite, but if the kelp populations on the west coast have either disappeared or died, then some of these issues that we're talking about here, such as the incursion of foreign organisms into our coast, might have changed dramatically. So I'm just wondering, how do we link those two? I know that our biosecurity people will be the people to ask, but then this issue is heavily impacted it, because if we're going to invest a lot of money and time and energy into this, and yet it becomes a moot point, how do we link these two streams of thought together?
I'm not sure if anybody's in a position to answer that right now, but I'm sure somebody can come back with an answer.
Well, we don't actually have an answer,
No.
Chairman, in terms of that at the moment. The present situation is we want clean vessels going off there. And one of the links of that is to have all that facility at Black vessels that are going around into Fiordland. In terms of incursions as a result of climate change, we don't know. It could be that it might be more Underia, and Underia might love it. So we're just doing the best we can with the information we've got.
We'll put the resolution. All in favour will say aye. Aye. We'll move to the Finance and Performance Committee meeting of the 22nd of February. Morris, would you like to comment on?
The only comment is on page 30, which is page 4 of those minutes. It's about the operating deficit being a bit less than what was going to be about the start. 7.7 million to 4.6, so that's a good result. And you can see there that there's five factors that contributed to it. So that's all I wanted to say, Mr. Chairman.
And you'll move the resolution?
Yes, do that.
Seconder for that resolution. Peter, any further discussion? I will put the resolution. All in favour will say aye.
Aye.
Right, we'll move to the Regional Services Committee meeting on the 22nd of February. Peter, would you like to comment on the meeting?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. It was another good lively meeting. We had two co-chairs for the Reedy Catchment Group, Catchment Liaison Committee come in and withdraw a previous comment that they've made. So that went reasonably well. But just overall, I think it's really good discussion. Obviously, river management is really highlighted at the moment, and some really good discussion around that, most notably probably around our leased land. And it's the land that we administer on behalf of the ratepayer. And what, the discussion was, what is the best use of that asset going forward for the ratepayer in terms of the things this council wants to achieve. So my wish, I think our wish was that those discussions continue. So I'll move that, and if there's any questions, happy to take some questions.
Peter,
I did ask the chairman to put an apology in for the that's difficult.
oh, right.
No, I didn't get that. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. We just note that.
Thank you.
You happy to second the?
My name.
Right. Moved and seconded, and we'll note that you were there and you're not down.
Yes.
Yeah. Correct that. And the apology for hearing. All in favour of the resolution, we'll say aye. That's no carried. So we'll move to 7, which is notification of urgent and extraordinary urgent business, supplementary reports or other. I'm not aware of any this morning. So that will take us to questions. I see we have a question from Robert Guyton. Would you like to?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for including the question in the agenda. I appreciate it. My question is, given that the council is charged with managing Southland's resources, are we actively managing the resource that is food? We give a great deal of time and energy and thought to livestock farming, food for export, but do we give any time at all to developing and supporting the production of food for Southlanders, that is locally produced food for locals? And we have a team to assist.
So, through you, Chair, through the regional climate change conversations, this has been a topic that has come up previously, and I'm sure will continue to come through as we advance the regional climate change strategy and action plan that supports that. But it's also relevant in the policy space. So Lucy, thanks as well, just to talk a bit about that.
So just in addition to Rachel's comments, Chair, I'd just add that both the National Policy Statement and the Productive Land intends to protect our areas of most productivity. So as we need to connect that to our climate change conversations as well, in terms of what we're using that land for and how we are growing our resilience. The other thing that I would point to is the opportunity that exists for the region through the regional spatial strategies being developed and determining what kinds of activities we want to be putting into various areas of the region. I think there's opportunities to make sure that we're doing more.
Comment. I've already mentioned it this morning. I think a conference is coming up in 2 weeks' time called Future Whenua, and I'm not sure if you're aware. I really hope we'll have representatives of some form. It's an event that's, I think it's its 4th year running, and it seems to be bringing together, in this case, Southlanders in particular, with it's the top of the agenda. So I think it's going to be a fascinating discussion, and given our responsibilities, we should really benefit it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. And I think, food sustainability going forward is going to become more important. And while we're a regulator, we've also got an enabling role for lot of areas where it's permitted activity. I've been to one or two of the meetings and where we can encourage people. I think that's really good. Right, we'll move to Chairman and Councillors' reports. There's quite a list of some of the meetings I've attended. A number of us actually attended the public forum of the City Council last week in Buckover City Council, and we had quite a good interaction there, and quite a large number of questions, which included managed retreats and resilience. But is there any specific questions for me on anything I've attended since the last meeting? Not seeing any, so do we have any other verbal reports from councillors?
I recently attended the hydrogen meeting. Just as and aside from that, I had a presentation from Richardson Group, who are at the moment this month, in fact, installing a hydrogen producing site in Gore, and they already have trucks which will run on hydrogen, or partly on hydrogen, partly on diesel. So there's a whole lot of development going on there, and they're putting the investment into it, all their own money. They haven't asked the government for anything. So things are moving along. So Gore is going to be the centre of it at the moment.
We've got Robert, then Alistair. Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councillor, can I ask about the Richardson Group's factory or production unit? What are they powering it with? Is it electricity, or then they're not burning coal?
They're going to use the electricity to spark water and hydrogen and oxygen, using hydrogen and medical grade oxygen.
Interesting.
Alistair.
Craig McKenzie, who's chief in charge of that for the Richardson Group, has offered us a ride in that truck as soon as anybody's ready.
Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight, following on from Councillor Cox's comments, point 3 in the report that Councillor Morrison has very astutely put together on our joint behalves. We were all quite concerned and curious about the freshwater needs of green hydrogen generation. So that would have been my key takeaway vernacular from that day. There's a lot that we might learn from Richardson's efforts and that of others.
Look, the Mural Forum did have a presentation from Neil Barclay, and seawater is probably one of the options going forward. It could also be wastewater, but yeah, they're not necessarily relying on groundwater. So this is a space that's moving quite quickly at the moment, and the Woodside is the Meridian's preferred partner, and they are looking at a ammonia plant, which more stable for transport, probably initially for export, but you've got all the flow-ons going forward. So there's a lot going on at the moment. Peter?
If I remember correctly, it was half a litre of water or 3 litre equivalents of diesel. Do you remember that, Phil?
I think what the key thing there was that hydrogen as a fuel is significantly more bulky than the existing fuel. The Richardson requirement for freshwater was very minor for their plant, but if we were to do it at scale, it wasn't conveyed to us at that particular workshop what the water demand would be for us a large scale.
They want 3 cubic metres of water a day, which is less than what they're using in their current truck wash on that site. So they're using less water.
But they'll still be washing their trucks.
I've got Peter, then Morris.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out that there's a huge amount of anxiety out there in society around the change from energy as a fuel to energy, stored energy. And that's the concept that we have to get our heads around. There was a really good report by Simon Upton, Parliamentary Commission for the Environment. I think it was last year, on cautioning around hydrogen. And I'm not saying technology will not come along. I'm pretty confident that things will. But there's still, the fundamentals are still there, that there's 2 units of energy in and they're only getting 1 out. So we just need to be careful and not get carried away with that. Just a wee bit of caution, but not, I'm not.
And look, we'll be bystanders in this. Industries will make their decisions or apply for consents, but there was a lot of interest, whether it's green, green energy options to hydrogen, a lot of things, a lot of conversations. The south is the place people are looking at for a whole lot of things at the moment. But Morris.
Peter really said and very concise and well what I was going to say. That just need to be a little bit cautious about all of this. It's good for some users, but it's very expensive. It's a very expensive way to use energy at the moment.
Yeah, we'll watch the space and people will put up propositions eventually and they'll go through a process. Any further reports? Jeremy.
I'm just going to mention that I was involved in a couple of drop-in sessions in the board on Mataura regarding the flood banks, and just also put on the team yes for doing that. And I think we've tried to reach as many people as we can to sort of indicate with tree removals and flood bank controls and things. So it was just good to say that we've probably reached out as much as we can, and we just want to indicate that hopefully if the public's got any other questions, they'll contact us. The other meeting that I was involved was with Councillor Gibson and our team from ES is going to the Waikaia catchment group, and it was good to see it. It's a relatively new group, but a group of keen farmers up that direction. They're obviously in the headwaters of Waikaia, which contributes, I think, 50% of the flow into Mataura. Is that right? Somewhere around that. So certainly interesting. One point that I took out from it was that there's more or less all sheep and beef. There's not very much dairy in there for catchments around Southland, and then it's almost a unique. Not saying there's anything wrong with dairy. It's just saying it's got its own we have its own issues with the hill country and things up there, but points probably tugging away. They're keen. They want the information, what needs to be done, and trying to understand what they need to do. So yeah, it was a good discussion. It's just as a lot of the public want to know what do we need to do. So it's just another group we are able to.
It's unique because it is sitting there and it's sheep, beef and deer. We don't get that sort of, and we've got large landholders involved, which makes it considerably easier when you've got less people involved.
Now, thanks for that. And obviously going forward, we're going to have quite a few more of these conversations. And at the end of the day, we want everybody owning their own issue, and they are different depending on the catchment and the land use. Any further reports? If not, we will move to item 10, staff report, and the first item up is the Chief Executive's report, starting on page 41. Wilma, would you like to comment?
Well, thank you. Yeah. So, of course, the matters that have lost on our minds since the last council meeting have been the impacts on communities on the North Island of the 2 cyclones, Kale and Gabrielle. And so with that in mind, our focus has been on supporting our fellow councils and the public in those areas with our staff. So we have a number of our staff from emergency management, from those who are experienced in providing support to those emergency management functions, as well as our river engineers have been travelling north and have returned in some cases, but some are still away, and the river engineers have just been deployed to provide support to those councils. Paul, do you want to talk about what they're doing up north for the river engineers?
Through the chair, yes, our team, team 4 led by Randall Beale have headed up to Hawke's Bay to assist in a coordinated way with the river engineers special interest SIG to support to some degree the recovery and the river engineering specific recovery of that particular area. They're going to be up there till they come back on next Tuesday. And there's, like I said, there's 4 members that have gone up with Randall as the manager.
Thank you. Clearly, matters relating to flood management and the state of infrastructure and its capacity to protect communities being top of our mind, and since, well, prior to this course, and more so since. And so our conversation around this as a council has been primarily the state of our own infrastructure. We'll be very aware, and further in this report, we report on the emergency works that have been going on the Matola Left Bank. And I'm pleased to say that work looks like it's going to be completed this week. One of the upsides of a dry summer has been the capacity to get in there and get that work done. And by the last council meeting, I think councillors had been out there with the councillors from Board District Council and also the community boards to look at that work. That work has really made a huge difference to the integrity of that stop bank. And while the work was going on, the river engineers were reporting that the need to secure the bank was quite visible. The erosion, because of the low levels of the river below the stop bank was a very visible feature, and the scouring that was occurring even with low levels of water was there. So that work is doing its job, and we're pleased to see that it's underway and nearly complete. That said, we've got quite a lot of other work underway. We've just started work on the bank of the Waihopai, and we're scoping up with in consultation with our funders in Wellington, their potential work program for the next 2 years. So the regional chief executives from the regional government sector have been meeting to discuss what the future requirements might be right across New Zealand, and to work very closely with central government and thinking not just about funding, but about the way we work together. So it's been a very high priority for us, both in immediate support to our colleagues in the North Island, but also really looking at our own infrastructure. So we have a lot of work underway, and when you get into the meeting report, you may want to ask me some more questions about that. Thank you.
We were Wellington a few weeks ago. Obviously the devastation in Hess Valley has been very public, but there was a flood bank put up last year for a 500-year return closer to Napier City, still overtopped that. They feel that saved a lot of lives. So it just highlights we're all living in at the moment, and the need to have those resilience where we can. So with Alistair, then Peter.
Probably I might need Dave Connors to help me here, because I'm no expert at anything, but I do understand that they're going to finish the True Left Bank for about $800,000 around about the 24th of April. Now, the question is, and it would make sense, well, things are dry and we've still got that money. I think we had 2 million. There's still 1.2 million left to go and do the right bank and get things done. But Dave will make some comment to that. And it's all about just having contractors, having their own contractors doing it at a reasonable rate and getting the job done.
All of you good comments. I think can I just say, Councillor, however, that there was no $2 million. You'll recall that I asked you for emergency funds for this, so we're taking it out of. This is an unbudgeted item, so there's not additional money.
But hang on, beyond that though, it would be good to get that done while things are dry.
I think that Paul will speak to this, but we have quite a comprehensive program of work that needs to be done. So.
Yeah, so I could try to update Councillor Gibson and the rest of the council. As Wilma's alluded to, we've done an extraordinarily good job of getting on with the true left-hand side in terms of time frame. But also, it's too early to confirm around the table, but we've done, I think, a good job of managing the budget as well, and we probably will be in a situation that we can come back with some, some efficiencies. We considered the left-hand bank because of, as Wilma's alluded to, the proximity of the bank to the stock bank, how close it was, and the concerns around it being undermined by erosion was the primary reason which we brought that matter to council.
So it would be fair to say, wouldn't it, all that, the final costs, so I'm happy that Dave's very optimistic about the budget. The final costs of this project are not here, so I wouldn't be very excited about the figure at this point. But I think we've been very fortunate that we picked a number based on the best thought of what this could cost us, and it looks like it's going to be less than that, which is good work. But it's not that we've underspent a budget. If you recall, Councillor, we are spending money that we hadn't budgeted because it was emergency works.
The right-hand bank has the same potential concerns, but the right-hand side's proximity of stock bank to bank is wider. So so erosion concerns are not as I understand it, and I'm not technical, but I understand it, not as acute as it would have been on the left-hand side. So our desire to do the right-hand bank still remains, but we need to put that into our work programme and bring that back in an appropriate way through council.
So what we're hearing is there's a priority, which makes sense. Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Randall and the engineers are up there at the moment. Will we get information available to us in the wind up of everything? The performance of the assets, the flood protection assets up there, and where the good bits were and where the weak points were. Will you have information? You got to seek that information to help with their decisions in the future.
Yeah, so I'll start, and then if maybe Dave can add a bit more detail. Certainly, our primary focus is just support to be lend a hand, get the technical people up there that can do the work to support that particular region, and that will be ongoing. No doubt there'll be over time. There'll be like in 2020 in our own situation after the floods in Mataura, there was a review to see how things went for us from a river engineering perspective, but also from the emergency manager. I assume that will be the normal course practice and learnings of things for other regional councils consider in that process will be managed through things like our river engineering special interest group that will pass on those learnings. Be assured that whilst I'm not particularly making any comment on the north because it is around recovery, but certainly we are constantly reviewing our information, our maintenance plan, our preparedness approaches, and so we will continue to do that. And if new information is made available over time to inform how we do stuff, then we will no doubt. I think it's the primary focus is the recovery at the moment.
I've got Eric, Ben Morris, like Alistair. Yeah, Jeremy.
I have different subject materials on flood banks.
Mr. Chair, David was going to make a comment to that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick example actually on what I've received through this morning from Gizmo. The work that's been done in strengthening one side of the stock bank up there through the government funding, that's held really well. And on the other side, there's water everywhere. So that just reinforces to me the work that we're doing is really important in this space. There'll be obviously more information coming through and we can present that to council at that sort of stages.
Any other questions on that same topic? Eric's indicating he's got a different one. Morris.
Well, I just want to ask, and I've asked this before, about where are we at identifying those places that are going to get flooded in the future, despite the building of stock banks, and planning some kind of managed retreat. I know the government is working on this, and it's probably going to provide guidelines, but I'd like to think that we are starting to think about that. I know that we were using LiDAR in the catchments and that'll identify places that are particularly at risk. But do we have any sort of program in place at the moment, thinking forward to deal with these areas like the land behind Stop Bank and Tara that could get flooded if we have, well, Stop Bank might stay in place, but the bank could be over top. And there are many other places around like that as well.
Certainly, through the chair, I can talk about the work that we're doing to inform the way in which we will manage, maintain, and potentially improve our infrastructure as we go forward. So that, as you were quite correct, I refer to it as 2D hydrological modelling, but it's built up on the use of LiDAR and bathymetric modelling surveys, so that you can develop a model or a comprehensive view of how a catchment will operate in different scenarios. I think we've shared through our catchment liaison committees a bit of a presentation of Randall, because he used to work on the West Coast, had advocated for the use of this type of technology to inform that if you had a 1 in a 100 event in a particular catchment with the current infrastructure, how would that look? And then if you were to increase protection, what would that look? And that really informs our infrastructure programme and our plans going forward. It probably has a secondary purpose, which will also, over time, in a kind of a medium to long-term sense, be able to tell you, well, these are the areas where potentially future development isn't a particular good idea as well. So I think I can't talk to through my work, particularly around management tree, but certainly that the more information we get around that hydrological modelling, the more informed we'll become around our own infrastructure.
I can comment on that. So for the work that, so the answer to your question is yes, we are. So where we're at that process at the moment is planning exactly what those master plans is reporting on for these areas. Some of them are between catchments, so they're areas like the area between Makarewa, Waihopai and the Oriti. We're looking at a whole of that area master plan because we need to understand it. So those areas, absolutely. And so that work is currently underway. And then there's a lot of data that we need for that. And there's, as Paul says, we need those bathymetric surveys to do the 2D modelling. And I think you may have seen some of the examples of that Randall's shown us, on the West Coast that you mentioned. So that work program's planning is now underway, and we're working with communities and with TAs to talk to them about that. In fact, I think we've got some meetings set up quite specifically on that particular area that I just mentioned. But that's going to take quite a while. It's another year's worth of work to actually get done and analyse. So we're advancing on a wide front on this. We need to deal with the immediate risks that we've got, and then we need to deal with the future, and the future is a long-term future, so we need to get, a really good sense of what needs to happen into that picture and who needs to be in the process of paying for this.
At the Cargill meeting, one of the first parts of the management retreat is actually identifying areas where we shouldn't be building houses in the future, and the LiDAR work will help us with that. We better go back to Eric, who's been waiting patiently.
It's all right, just different subject, and I'm noting on this report the work at Tiwai with sampling, which is good news, results in April. How comprehensive has any previous testing been? Do we have a measure of level of degradation? And is there going to be an ongoing program from now on that we might get a measure of what's happening?
So in relation to this work, we needed a baseline of information. As with most of the monitoring that comes in relation to any consents, it's done by the consent holder. But the amount of information that we had in the CMA was not great. We also wanted to have a level of independent monitoring ourselves on site. So we did both. It's not our intention at this point to continue to do that. We want a baseline for a future program of monitoring. And so part of the outcome for this is the way that we would work with the smelter in the future to ensure that works, and whether that includes independent monitoring or something for us to be discussing.
So that discussion about ongoing is still work in progress.
It is work in progress. We my conversation with them about taking a whole of site view of that site. It's quite clear from the report that we got from EHS last year that point source monitoring doesn't cut it. It's a snapshot in time. It's can change quite quickly. You know, a shower of rain after a dry spell is going to give you a different result to one that might happen a bit later. So, and we also know the interconnected nature of that system. So, you know, looking at very specific areas, we need a lot more information than we have. The smelter itself has actually sunk a lot more wells in order to provide us with data. So they're doing the same thing, and they brought their own independent group in to do their baseline monitoring as well. So we're going to have a lot of data. The question now is, what does this whole site future look like? And that's the live conversation.
Thank you.
We'll just indicate where we are on the list. We've got Alistair, Jeremy, Phil, Lyndall, and Robert. Alistair.
I would like to move a motion that we do get on with the North Bank, but I know I'm out of position here. I'd like that to be recorded because I think that's important to save core. The right bank, sorry, I was on to. But the other thing I've asked before is that can we get a price to tidy up all of our best estimate, to tidy up all our stock banks, to then start fitting that into our long-term plan?
Yes,
This is the second time I've asked for that.
So that is absolutely what we are doing, Councillor, right now. The most important matter for us to be discussing in relation to the long-term plan is how we are going to fund our infrastructure. And that work is hugely dominating our investigations in it right now, because we need to be very clear about what needs to be done immediately, as well as what needs to be done in the medium term. Both of those are live conversations, and funding for that is going to be a major conversation for the LT, which means we're talking about that very soon, because we're only 18 months away from that.
Look, to be prepared to say this is a very comprehensive process. It can't be ad hoc. We need those master plans, how we're going to fund them, but it is coming, Alison. Right, you're not.
I was just going to say to as well to your comments on the right hand bank, we will be bringing an update, a plan and approach around the right hand side, which needs to include the left hand side.
So what I can say to you about the right bank at Matilda, and I just need to be really clear about the process we went through for you to agree that I'm spending money, that under the section of the RMA that gives me those powers, is that it needs to be an emergency. These are unbudgeted funds. So there is no spare unbudgeted funds to use for the right bank, because the right bank is not an emergency. However, the fact that it might be a priority and we need to think about how we fund it is not off the table, Councillor. That's just my point. There's not spare emergency funds. There are no funds.
Cool.
I'm just going to observe in response to the question about managed retreat earlier that certainly the regional climate change group have identified that will be useful to undertake a regional climate change risk assessment to guide thinking across the TAs and the regional council, supported by LIDAR modelling, etc. So it may not be. The question I was going to ask, based on the insights from up north with the cyclone, is do we have a sense if we're carrying particular sites or locations of risk from forestry / that we could take a proactive approach to managing forestry?
That's a very interesting question for you to lean forward to answer, which I'm really pleased about.
So it was a question I got asked as well. So I believe from in respect, if I answer this in relation to our infrastructure ourselves, so we have as you know, we have a bylaw that manages land use, allows us to be across the way land use are joining our infrastructure. That's one measure. We do maintenance and walking along the infrastructure to make sure there's any sort of risks in proximity to our infrastructure that we complete. I've asked the question around forestry as it stands today. The risks are, I think, in this particular region are very different to that of the North Island. There's not the same scale and the slopes are very different in the North Island to where we would be. That's not to say as forestry grows, there won't be an increased risk to manage. But as today, I don't think it's the same type of risk that we've got in the North Island, but we will be live to it as things progress.
There is an issue about bridges, I think that's, that I know that we're looking at all of the bridges in the region in terms of who owns them and what the impacts might be. It does seem, for initial conversations, that the height of bridges on the East Coast has been a matter. And we have some interest in the height of bridges here for similar reasons in terms of, flood impact and, in terms of the right bank at the township board, we have some concerns about that. So, those are matters of live conversation between ourselves and the bridge owners.
Yes, so you can be assured that I'll continue to have those conversations and work in a supportive and collaborative way around how to resolve that in terms of next steps.
We have had a voluntary protocol for some years with most of the major companies, so I'm not saying there's no issue, but and also the work our people do, we tend to burn the slash. We did have some issues on the Mataura after 2020, so we're not totally there, but you can drive around the countryside, you don't see that same level of steepness, and I've been saying for a while, really, there's got to be buffers put in. But we will have a few, but I think we're in a better position than some areas. Lyndall.
Thanks, Chairman. Fortunately for everybody, Councillor Morrison has asked one of my questions. But firstly, just going back to the managed retreat conversation also, highlights the importance of the regional spatial strategy and having all that information to take to our sister authorities so that we are not conflict's the wrong word, but the district plans are not being centred upon that grant development in inappropriate places. So bringing all of that climate change conversation and those district plan conversations together in the regional spatial strategy is going to be challenging, but really important. My question is actually about the EPA fast track application on page 47, as mentioned. I'm just wondering if staff are able to give us a bit more information about why that happened. I appreciate that it might be inappropriate for them to say at this point, but I'm interested.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just to explain the process, the Ngāi Tahu application was lodged in about 3 years ago in the Environment Southern Consent System and had gone through quite a lot of technical review within the organisation. Ngāi Tahu decided last year, as they're able to do, that they want to refer the application through the EPA fast track process. That's an amendment that was made to the RMA post-COVID, which gives a period which runs out on the 8th of July 2023 for applicants to follow this alternative pathway through the COVID fast track process. And it gives them, I guess, a faster decision-making process than the consent process. Put that in context, to date, the decision-making for the fast track process has ranged from about 85 working days to 95 working days, which compares to an average of about 220 working days for a large-scale notified consent application. So they refer the application through to the EPA. There's some tests that have to be met to be accepted for that process. They met those tests. We were involved in dialogue with Ngāi Tahu and through the Chief Executive at the time, Mr. Phillips, we didn't oppose that pathway. So it's now in the fast track system where things are at the moment. All parties that got notified, there's about 30 parties, ourselves included, had an opportunity to comment. And there were 18 parties who have lodged comments, including ourselves. In what is a pretty compressed time frame to do that, we had about 2 weeks to pull those together. Obviously, the Chief Executive approved those prior to them going to the EPA. I can send you a link if you're interested to those different comments. They are quite interesting to see different perspectives on the project.
And also the applicant and their lawyer have responded to those comments as well, which is also quite an interesting read. So I can send those links through. The where to from here, it's anticipated that the likely decision probably sometime in the first quarter of the 2023-2024 year, so maybe before September, I would think, possibly earlier. The panel themselves, which is 3 people, Claire Lenihan is the chair, Sharon McGarry, who's a commissioner that we use frequently, who was our nominee, and Reg Prophet, who's a very experienced iwi hearing commissioner. We're down here last week and undertook a physical visit, so actually travelled over to where the proposed facility is proposed to be. So they're now crunching together all the application documentation and the feedback that's been provided and working through that decision process.
Thanks for that. Robert.
Thank you. There's a request with regard in your report, Wilma, about the wilding pine. Is there some research that we hold here with regard to hydrological effects of the wilding pines? So I hear a lot about it, but I just wonder if I could read a paper that will inform me better than I am now. It's just a small request, but my question was with regard to Tiwai, how are mana whenua being informed or informing themselves about activities there, and how is their view feeding back into council, because their view presumably will be somewhat different from ours, given the different culture?
Sure. So we have organised themselves around an Awaroa working group, which is a combination of representatives from Awaroa Rūnaka and Whirinanga Maikahu in Christchurch. And that working group is the group that works directly with New Zealand aluminium smelters on this issue. And it is also the group that provides representatives to our Tiwai oversight group that meets here. So we have a meeting in which we provide an update on where we're at and work together on events of work. And so from Turunanga, we have the project manager on that oversight group, and also Ian Farner, the chair of Awaroa Rūnaka on the group. So that's how we stay connected and how they stay connected. We've also been to brief the trustees at Awaroa Rūnaka on our program of work, so that we can talk to them directly and not just through the structures of our own meetings. In relation to the work that we're doing in the CMA at the moment, we've been working, I think, Bruce, with the Awaroa Rūnaka just to ensure that they're aware of what we're doing. So you want to comment on what we're doing?
To the Chief Secretary's comments, we do have the in-house staff team have a fortnightly meeting with Megan Reid, who's the project manager that is on the oversight group. That meeting is actually happening right now at the moment, just to make sure we've got that regular dialogue happening. We have proposed a discrete program of work to try and gather some further information around potential effects on the hingakai and the ecology in the area and tonga species. So that's being worked through with Rūnanga at the moment, and just we've had some feedback from them on that program. So very conscious of making sure there's that regular connection.
So we have a structured governance layer.
It's good to hear.
Right, there's no further questions on Wilma's report. Would somebody like to move the recommendation? Moved by Jeremy. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 2, which is updates to the staff delegations manual. Forward.
This item is just bringing the role for the information technology team leader, senior engineer into line with all the other team leaders and ensuring he has appropriate delegations for the work he undertakes.
Something like the words. You seconding, Alison?
Oh, you will second it, but you all want to say.
Okay. We haven't seconded, but you can comment.
And then the $10,000 is budgeted for.
It's always budgeted, it has been budgeted, they cannot spend without budget.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Any further questions? Not, I'll put the item 3, local government New Zealand Zone 5 and 6 meeting attendance. This meeting is to be held in Queenstown on Thursday, the 20th and 21st of April in Queenstown.
The only thing, they still don't have an agenda for it, it's being developed, but I'm advised it will follow the format of previous meetings. The meeting will start at 9 o'clock on the Thursday and conclude by lunchtime on the Friday. Without the travel.
I'm happy to go, but I could also put up one, two, another two councillors for free board.
I'll probably put my hand up. Lyndall. I think it's not flights, we can put people in the
I'm
car.
available, but I'm not sure if I'm the best.
So can I just say, Chairman, it's actually, it's an interesting kind of connection point and learning point. So if you haven't been, you might find it valuable, and they're putting much more effort into the program, aren't they, Chairman? And covering off a wide range of topics and doing that with insight from consultants or professionals or whatever. So it's actually, if you haven't been to one and it's kind of close, then actually I would recommend that you have crack for at least one to get a handle on some of the broader things that are causing angst in our sector. Having said that, I would still like to go, but if there are new people who would like to go, certainly they should.
I'm happy if there's new people who'd like to go, because we went to the Nelson.
Peter, your comment
Yeah,
was
just-
indicating.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just on the wider issue around extension work that the councillors may do, you know, at the conference, and that's been a traditional one. Robert talked about the, future when it's coming up. I went to the Environmental Defence Conference, I think it was 2 years ago. The reaction was that's not something we normally do. And I understand there was even a couple of emails questioning why I went to that. When I went there, it was everything that's in our warehouse talking about freshwater, climate change, revegetation of forest, everything that was there. It was a fantastic thing. It was challenging, of course. So I just want to think we might broaden the horizons a wee bit on this sort of extension stuff.
Can I just put 2 cents in there? It depends on whether you're going as a council representative or as yourself. And we had this conversation with one of our previous councillors as well, because he had attended something, kind of half in his capacity as a councillor, but half out of his own interest. And so I think that's probably something that council, we need to work our way through ourselves.
Yeah, we're expanding our viewpoints on this stuff instead of just going with the traditional things. We've always done this, so we always will.
But whether council subsidises that is whether I guess.
Yeah.
There is an ability for a council or councillors to raise a particular conference or event, and then we can have the discussion. We've got the ones that are pretty set and concrete, but we're up for those discussions. There are a lot of them, some of them they can choose. Neville.
Council, otherwise we're in on behalf of the council, along with the chairman and chief executive.
They can have it. And Alison is also interested. Right, moved, seconded by Jeremy, I think. Possibly Bill.
Yeah, he needs to go.
When we've got the offer of accommodation and it's not plane flights, Phil would like to go as well.
Could we put our names down? Like, I'm not too worried about accommodation and things like that, so just. Yeah.
Well, I'm happy to put up accommodation for 3.
I just, so we might as well have my name there. Fit it and I'll probably go. I have an actual thing. It's nice and handy and I'll.
I don't even mind going for the day.
Let's put them all down,
Yeah.
but the subject confirmation against. Yes. Moved and seconded, got all the names. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 4, which is the councillors' meeting schedule. Any additions or changes or omissions? Eric.
I have a potential leave of absence request in that I have an invitation to a wedding in India, and it's about a 70% go, but it may not happen from the 3rd to the 17th of April.
Sounds fun. Exciting.
The changes to the schedule, the Te Rōpū Hui this Friday is in Gore. There's the council workshop next week, I understand, is on climate change matters and coastal planning matters. There'll be agenda going out on Monday for that. There are recruitment panel interviews for the independent chair are happening on the 20th of March, and they involve the chairman, councillors Ludlow, McPhail and Evans. The Catchment Liaison Committee meeting with regional services will be held at Salvation Army Hall in Winton on the 21st of March. It involves, anybody's welcome to go, but it largely directed at the Regional Services Committee. And on the 18th of April, we have Catchment Liaison Committee Chairs meeting with Councillor Manawhenua Rex. It involves site visits in the morning and a workshop with Ian Fuller in the afternoon. It's at Salvation Army. The workshop will be held at Salvation Army. But it's an all-day session, so there'll be more details out as that's confirmed. And there's another climate change subcommittee meeting scheduled for the 27th of April from 10 to 12.
Can I just make a correction there? That, on the council workshop, Monday the 15th of March, it's actually Wednesday the 15th of March.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, sorry.
Monday the 13th of March, just above it, and then Monday the 15th of March.
Both days for good measure, councillor.
Any further requests for leave or additions to the schedule?
Just to include the climate change subcommittee.
Sorry. There might be an email you might have sent me as well. I haven't quite.
Addition. Alice, did you have
I
a
requested leave from the 30th of March to Good Friday. Whatever that is.
7th?
Yeah. April 7th. Gotta walk the advertisement.
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna hurt.
No further advances. Would somebody like to move?
Oh,
Schedule as amended. Moved by Neville, seconded by Lyndall. All in favour, say aye. Aye. Right, we'll move to item 5, which is the common seal. The recommendation. Moved in lightning fast fashion, moved and seconded. All in favour, say aye.
Aye. You done well.
And item 6 is reporting of expenditure above delegated authority.
This expenditure relates to the Mid-Dome Wilding Trees program of work. It was for $836,237.32, inclusive of GST for the month of December. Expect a couple more of those to come through. They're right in the middle of their season of work.
That's by Neville, seconder, Jeremy. Further discussion, I'll put the motion.
I just wonder, I'm not trying to delay the process, but it's a wee while since we've had a progress report on just what they're achieving and how it's going, and I think that would be useful if we could arrange that for some meeting.
Good news, it's going to happen about 1 o'clock.
Oh, no. Oh, well. What happens when your computer doesn't go?
Is that money budgeted for, or where does it sit?
Yes.
So it's normal expenditure.
We're just the post box for it.
Okay.
For the discussion, I'll put the motion on the table, say aye.
Aye.
Right, there's no extraordinary or urgent business that I'm aware of this morning. So that will take us through the public excluded. Would somebody like to move that involved, perhaps with regards to the reasons first?
Are you going to deal with the confirmation of minutes of the ordinary meeting of council held on the 1st of February, the adoption of committee resolutions of the Strategy and Policy Committee held on the 15th of February, and the adoption of committee resolutions of regional services committee held on the 22nd of February. And the reasons are to enable the local authority holding the information to carry out without prejudice or disadvantage commercial activities, section 72H, to protect the privacy of natural persons, section 72A, and the matters were under discussion before the Environment Court, and therefore council is authorised to deliberate in private. Section 48(1)D is qualified by section 48(2)A1.
Thank you, Jan. Moved by Jeremy, seconded by Peter. All in favour, will say aye. Is there recording ceased?
And wait for confirmation from David.